Yesterday was episode 1, now it's time for Clan Selection Plus 2.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Grappler, welcome back to part 2 of the set reviews for Clan Selection Plus Volume 1 and 2 sets. And that means we have yet another very long video ahead of us where we're gonna tackle the other 12 clans of the whole 24 clan package. And just like yesterday's video, I'm gonna blast through these cards as fast as possible to not make this video longer than it needs to be. And that means I'm gonna probably skip over certain details. So if you wanna have a more in-depth analysis about these cards, I will link to their corresponding Cardfight update video where I went into in-depth detail once the cards were initially revealed. And if you want even more information, don't worry, I will cover everything you need to know in their corresponding deck spotlights that will happen in the coming weeks on this channel. Also, I forgot to mention, but probably you're already aware of that, in the time bulk of this video itself, I put timestamps for the respective clans. So if you're only interested in specific clans, then you can jump straight to that part of the video. And if not, you can just watch from this point onward like a typical podcast type of video, as I just keep on talking and you just can watch along as we go. And of course, if any of these cards interest you and you want to get your hands on these cards for a decent price, then definitely check out the online store of Parkage and use discount code TIMELEAP5 to get 5% off of your discount on your entire order. So with all that out of the way, let's jump straight into the first clan for this video, which is none other than Aichi's clan, Royal Paladin. And we start off with their draw PG, which is Flash Shield Assault, which is of course a 5-star card like any other draw PG reprint. Now for the second reprint, which in this case isn't an actual reprint but a brand new introduction for the TCG, as we've got Flourishing Knight In-detph. And this grade 1 unit has the abilities Auto Rigor Circle. When placed, costs Soul Blast 1. Look at the 7 cards from the top of your deck, call to 1 card with Alt-Bow in its card name from among them to the Rigor Circle in the same column as this unit, and shuffle your deck. And it has the ability Auto Rigor Circle. At the end of the battle, it boosted a grade 3 rearguard cost. Put the rearguard that it was boosted into your soul and return this unit to your hand. So effectively what this card allows you to do is get an Alt-Bow from the top 7 of your deck onto the field, and then at the end of the battle, or at the end of the turn, how you want to see it, into your soul. This is really good to have a very strong early aggressive push, as you have the trial deck Alt-Bow that can become a massive beater. But more importantly, this card allows you to get the whole all aerial Divine Mount Alt-Bow play active on your very first grade 3 turn, which in my honest opinion make this card a solid 5-star card, as it's the grade 1 for the entire Alt-Bow archetype. So it's a really nice card to have for Royal Paladin players. Now for the other reprint, we've got the grade 1 Little Sage Marin, which has the ability Auto Rigor Circle. Once a turn, when your Auto Rigor is placed in the same column as this unit, cost counter +1, draw a card, and this unit gets power plus 3k until the end of turn. For me, this is a 1-star reprint, as it's a very old card, but it's also not that amazing. For me, it's just a pack filler, as they probably didn't have an idea to put in something else here. Now for the final reprint, we've got yet again another promo reprint, as we've got Deokinak Dragon, which has the ability Auto Rigor Circle. When placed, if you have another unit in the same column as this unit, Soul Charge 1. If you Soul Charge a trigger unit, this unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. It's basically a grade 2 Pongal version, which makes it actually pretty decent, as it works really nicely for the Alt-Bow archetype. For me, it's going to be a 3-star reprint, as it's a reprint of an old promo that might be annoying to get, so now it's actually really good accessible, so it's fine for what it is. Now we get to the actual new cards for Royal Paladin, and we start off with the grade 1 Charging Jewel Knight Morvidas. And Morvidas has the abilities Act on Rigor Circle, cost counter +1, and put a normal unit from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck. Soul Charge 1, and one of your units with Jewel Knight in its card names get power plus 5k until the end of turn. So it's basically a Soul Charge engine that can also give your field a small power increase. She can give it to herself, so she can work without any other Jewel Knight. So it's an interesting skill, but then it also has the ability Auto on Vanguard and Rigor Circle. When another unit is placed on this unit's circle, draw a card. So it's a free draw engine if you just ride on top of her, but you can also, if you superior call on top of her with one of your superior call skills or whatever you called from hand, you still get a draw, so you compensate for the unit that you lose in the process. So it's an interesting card. It's not the most amazing type of card, but it works really nicely with the Dual Knight archetype, and the fact that you have that free draw in potentially whatever playstyle you have with Royal Paladin can actually be very good in certain circumstances. So for that, I think I'm gonna give it a solid 4-star card, because just the second ability is really good in my opinion. But then we get to the grade 2, which is also really good, because we have Explode Dual Knight Laylee. And Laylee has the ability Auto and Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, put 2 normal units from the drop zone on the bottom of your deck in any order, Soul Charge 1, and this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of the battle. So again, we have this putting cards on the bottom of your deck to gain soul and some bit of power. The upside is, however, is that this ability doesn't cost you any counterblast, so you can do this turn after turn after turn, which is also really good. But then also we have the ability Auto Vanguard and Vanguard Circle. When your other unit is placed on this unit circle, that placed unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. So where the grade 1 gives you a draw, this just increased the new unit with 10k power, thus making your potential multi-attack strategies a lot better, as they can overcome defensive triggers potentially. And this can also be utilized in the main phase to just make your units a lot better, and as a Vanguard right option that makes your grade 3 actually a beefy beater without calculating in the force marker. So for that, I think it's a solid 4-star card, because both its skills are actually pretty useful and also very generically accessible to Royal Paladin, and that first ability can actually be beneficial to whatever deck that wants to superior call specific cards, as it allows you to reload the deck once again, which is also an upside to the grade 1 that I didn't really address, as that's another reason why it's worthy of its 4-star rating. And then we get to the grade 3, and this is where everything starts to click together, as we have Pure Heart Dual Knight Ashley. And Ashley has the abilities Auto Vanguard the Vanguard Circle. At the end of the battle it attacked, Soul Blast 2, so this is where all that soul charge is coming for. Search your deck for up to 1 grade 2 or less card with Dual Knight in its card name, call to the Vanguard Circle and shuffle your deck. If this unit is on the Vanguard Circle, call up to 2 cards instead of 1. So this card basically allows you to multi-attack. If it's your Vanguard, you can attack for 5 times in a single turn with only this ability, and if it's on your Rearguard Circle, you basically can replace herself after she attacked, because you can attack with her, superior call unit on the same circle, and then attack again on that circle. And it comes in handy with her other ability, which is Auto and Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. When your other unit is placed on this unit circle, cost counterblast 1, and that placed unit gets critical plus 1 until the end of turn. So the other unit that you superior call potentially on top of her gains potentially that extra critical, thus making the extra multi-attack even more devastating. So you can see where this card's really good to unleash a lot of multi-attacks. But what's even better about this card is that it's actually very splashable in whatever deck you want to play, because this can be your support grade 3, put it onto the Rearguard Circle, and if you run the grade 2 or maybe copies of the grade 1, you can immediately superior call them out of the deck and attain those multi-attacks. And at the same time, because those grade 1s and grade 2s can shuffle back cards back into your deck, you can keep shuffling the cards you need for this little engine back into your deck, so you can keep doing it over and over and over again, which is actually really good. So for me, this is going to be a solid 5-star card, because on its own as a separate archetype is already really good. But then it's also splashable in any type of Royal Paladin deck, which is also a very nice plus. Now if we go over to the second clan for this set, we enter Oracle Think Tank, and for them, for the Draw PG, we have Weather Forecast Miss, which is of course 5 stars. But then for the second reprint, we can see Battle Sister Panettone, and Panettone has the ability Act on Rearguard Circle, cost put this unit into your soul, look at 2 cards from the top of your deck, put a card from among them on the top of your deck, 1 card from among them on the bottom of your deck, and until the end of turn, the power increase of your next trigger effect gets plus 10k. So this is a very important reprint, and for that it's a solid 5-star card, because this was a very expensive promo which is now finally accessible, but it's really good because it gives you the soul and it allows you to manipulate the top deck without wasting any actual resources, and it makes your next trigger double the value. And with Oracle Think Deck manipulating the deck already to a very effective degree, you can guarantee the value of this effect, making your Battle Sister and even whatever Oracle Think deck you want to play that more devastating. So it's a very important reprint in my opinion. But then we get to another promo that's now finally coming to the TCG, as we have Battle Sister Kasata, which has the ability, although in Vanguard Circle, once a turn, when your drive check reveals a trigger unit, you may have this unit get power plus 10 until the end of turn. For me, this is a solid 3-star card. Like, you won't use this in any deck, but it's basically a better Panamagus, as you immediately get double the value for one trigger, thus making the value of Twin Drive much better if you only hit one trigger. This was that great one that we missed for the Susanoo deck back early last year, which we finally get, and it's just a good overall pressure guard that you can just slam behind your Vanguard, as it means that if they want to guard for a 1 to pass or potentially 2 to pass, they need to factor in the fact that the first trigger is actually 20k power instead of 10k power. So that is a really nice, effective, aggressive tool card. Now for the final reprint, we have Battle Sister Choquette, which has the ability, although in Vanguard and Vanguard Circle, when placed, costs Soul as 1, look the 5 cards from the top of your deck, reveal to one grade 3 card from among them and put them in the top of your deck. Shuffle the rest of the cards and put them on the bottom of your deck. And this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. This is somewhat of a grade 3 searcher, but it doesn't really get the card, it just stacks it on top of the deck. For me, this is a 1-star reprint because it was originally a common that isn't out of print, or should I say there isn't so much of a demand that we cannot get our hands on these cards. This card is very accessible, it's cheap, so I don't really see the point of actually reprinting this card. So for me, it's a 1-star. Now if we get into the actual new Battle Sister support, we see Battle Sister Torrejas, and Torrejas has the abilities, although in Vanguard and Vanguard Circle, when placed, reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's a card with Battle Sister in its card name, you may put it into your hand. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. So it's a free draw, or it's a free check top effect, which both are pretty decent, but thanks to the fact that they're together in one card or in one ability, makes it actually pretty good. But then we also have, although in Vanguard Circle once a turn, when you look at the deck by an effect during your turn, you may have this unit get power plus 5k until the end of turn. So basically, her first ability activates her second effect, so if you place her on the Vanguard Circle, she becomes a 13k booster or beater that potentially pluses you or allows you to check the top, and if it's a trigger, which aren't a Battle Sister in most cases, it stays there, thus securing that trigger. So overall for me, this is actually a pretty good card that maybe not that generically useful, but definitely in the Battle Sister archetype is a solid pick, so I think it's a solid 3-star card for what it is. Now if we get to the grade 2, we have Battle Sister Trifle, which has the abilities, although in Vanguard and Vanguard Circle, when placed from hand, costs counter as 1, look at 3 cards on the top of your deck, call up to 1 card with Battle Sister and its card name from among them to the Vanguard Circle, and put the rest on the top of your deck in any order. So this effect is very similar to what we had in the G era with Zodiac Time Beast with Cruising Dragon, only it calls it to the field instead of adding it to hand, but at the same time you can still manipulate the top deck so you can leave triggers on top, which is actually pretty good in my opinion. But then also its ability, although in Vanguard Circle, when it attacks, if you looked at your deck by a card's ability this turn, until the end of the battle, this unit gets power plus 5k. Then costs Soulless 1 grade 3, and your opponent cannot call Sentinels from his or her hand to the Guardian Circle. So by her own ability, she becomes a 14k attacker that can potentially call another card onto the field, so you don't have to waste cards from hand, and immediately can manipulate the top of your deck. And if you have a grade 3 in your soul, which isn't that hard of a thing to do, it is also a Sentinel Restrict, and as we're going to see, we can stack the power of this attack quite sizably high enough that that will actually matter. So it's actually a pretty decent combo card, extender, resource engine, as well as a potential finisher. So for that, it's a solid 4-star card. It's not a 5-star by the sheer fact that it's very restricted to the Battle Sister archetype. But for that archetype, I think this is a really good grade 2. And then we get to the final grade 3, which is the new main boss unit for Battle Sisters, which is Battle Sister Fromage. And Fromage has the abilities Continuous on Vanguard Circle. During your turn, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, all of your units with Battle Sister in their card names get power plus 5k. So this basically gives your entire columns a free 10k power buff if your opponent's at grade 3. It's just free power, so that's fine. But then we also have Auto and Vanguard and Vanguard Circle, when placed, costs counter plus 1 and soul plus 1 and draw a card. If you have a Vanguard with Battle Sister in its card name, draw a card. So either you draw 1 or you potentially draw 2. So if you write her herself, it's a +2, which is pretty decent, and it allows you to keep flooding the board for aggressive plays that you want to do with Battle Sister, so it's decent. But then we also have act on Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, cost discard a card from your hand. Look at the same number of cards from the top of your deck as the number of units with Battle Sister in their different card names, and put each card you looked on the top or bottom of your deck in any order. So this basically allows you to manipulate the X amount of cards on the top of your deck, and with a full field of Battle Sisters it can actually be pretty good, because you can put a lot of non-triggers to the bottom of your deck and keep potentially 2 criticals or maybe heal or something on the top of your deck and get the value that you want. That together with the other top deck manipulation that we already have, and we can see some really interesting plays that we can do, because we can use this effect preemptively and then call the grade 2, which then can call one of the cards that we just put on top of the deck and then stack the rest where we want to do that. So we can actually manipulate the value of the grade 1 that calls or gets the card on top of the deck, and the grade 2 as well, in combination with this grade 3. So there's actually a very interesting way how you can manipulate the top deck to get way more value of your cards than you would initially think about it. So for that, I think it's a solid 4-star card. It's not 5-star for the same reason as the grade 2, that is heavily restricted to the Battle Sister archetype. But for that archetype, I think it's a pretty decent boss unit, and might become even better if we get even more Battle Sister support in the future. Now, with Battle Sisters done, we go over to the other clan that looks very similar as we enter Genesis. And for Genesis, we have of course the Draw RPG, which is Goddess of Self-Sacrifice Kushinada, which is of course a 5-star card. And then for the other new card, as they got a promo card that's now finally coming to the TCG, as we've got White Brush Witch Arctic. And Arctic has the abilities Auto and Vanguard Circle. When placed, look at 2 cards on the top of your deck, put 1 card from among them into your soul, and put 1 card from among them on the top of your deck. And it has the ability Auto and Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, when your grade 3 or greater Vanguard attacks, one of your Vanguards and this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. So this is very similar to a grade 2 from the Genesis trial deck for Uranus, as it has the very similar skills, and it's actually a pretty decent card that a lot of Genesis players wanted to get their hands on as soon as possible. So for what this card does and for what value it gives, it's a solid 4-star card in my opinion that is somewhat of a clan staple at this point. Now for the other reprints, we have Decay of the Just Path, which has the ability Auto and Vanguard Circle. When placed, cost put a card from your hand into your soul, look at the 7 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 2 Astral Poet cards from among them, and put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. If you reveal 2 cards, get an Imaginary Gift Force and put that marker on your Vanguard Circle. Now for me, this is going to be a generic 3-star card. Like, yes, it's very important for the Astral Poet deck, but at the same time, I didn't really feel like that this card needed a reprint right now at this instant, as this card already has many different versions in high rarities and different SP packs and that kind of stuff. And the Astral Force set wasn't all that long ago, and there's also not, I believe, that high of a demand for the archetype in general. So I think it's a fine reprint, but I don't know if it actually was needed right now. Now for the final reprint, we see Witch of Frogs Melissa, which has the ability Auto and Vanguard Circle. When placed from hand, cost Soul Blast free. Your opponent looks at the same number of cards from the top of his or her deck as the number of his or her rearguards, calls them to the rearguard circle with units, and shuffle the deck. Your opponent's abilities do not activate from this call. Now this is a really nice, annoying card to have for Genesis players, but this didn't need a reprint, and for me it's gonna be a 1-star reprint because it was a common, which is still cheap. So yeah, okay, fine. Now if we get to the actual new cards for Genesis, we see Obliteration Regalia Var, which has the ability Auto Vanguard Circle. When it attacks or boosts, you may put a card from your soul face down as Divine Gauge for this unit. And it has the ability Act on Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, cause discard on one of this unit's Divine Gauges. Soldier is free. If you have a Vanguard with the Regalia in its card name cost, retire this unit and countercharge 1. So effectively, this is a unit that can generate you gauges, which is some type of resource, but can use those gauges to generate soul and potentially countercharge, which is really, really good, as it basically, this grid 1 is an all-around resource engine generator, which makes it actually a solid 4-star card in my opinion, and can be the center point of some interesting combo potential because it generates so much resources. Now as for the grade 2, we've got Demon Exorcism Regalia Frut, and Frut has the abilities Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, you may put a card from your soul face down as a Divine Gauge for this unit. So again, some Divine Gauge generation. But then it also has the ability Auto Vanguard Circle. At the end of the battle, it attacked or boosted, cost this unit has one or more divine gauges, and move all of this unit's divine gauges to another rearguard, put this unit into your soul and draw a card. This is effectively a divine gauge version of Steam Mechanic Naboo, as it does the same thing as it shoves itself in the soul, so it opens up a spot and it draws you cards, so you can use it to be very aggressive in the early game while cycling through your deck. But at the same time, it generates gauges and it puts those gauges to other units, so it's actually way better because it works really nicely in the archetype, and it can combo very nicely with the CEO, Yggdrasil and Norn combo, as you can put the gauges to your Norn, so you can fuel that card to keep restanding your units, which is actually really nice. So for me, it's a solid 4-star card that is really effectively in the Divine Gauge archetype. And then we get to their new boss unit, which is Regalia of Wisdom Angelica. And Angelica has the abilities Continuous Vanguard Circle, all of your rearguards with Divine Gauge cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects, and gets power plus 5k. So it's a full frontal protection, and it buffs your entire field, somewhat similar to what we just see with Oracle Think Tank, only the Battle Sisters don't get this protection. So that's already pretty good. But then we see Auto and Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, choose up to 2 of your rear guards and put up to 1 card from your soul face down as divine gauges for each of those units. So this card generates 2 divine gauges on attack, and because Norn can restand it, we can generate 4 divine gauges per turn with only this unit, which is really good. And then finally we have the third ability, which is Auto Vanguard Circle. At the end of your opponent's turn, cast discard 5 divine gauges and heal a card from your damage zone. This is a nice ability, but it will have rarely come up because you much rather want to use your divine gauges for other abilities, and healing a card isn't actually that great in the sense that this deck is way more aggressive, that you want to kill your opponent before that healing actually comes up to some extent. So it's a fine thing that might come up in some matches, but you mainly play this card for the first 2 abilities in the first place. So for me, this is a solid 4-star card, as it allows you to create those divine gauges very fast, and it gives you wide protection, and that together with the Yggdrasil grade 3 means that no matter what you write, your field has some way to protect itself, so you can counter play against certain decks like Kagero, for example. So for that, I think it's a solid 4-star card. And of course, this card synergizes really nicely with Norn, because we can keep giving Norn those divine gauges it needs to restand your Angelica if it's behind your Vanguard. So it has some really nice interaction between those cards as well. Now, speaking of Kagero, let's go over Kagero, and we start off with their draw PG, which is of course Wyvern Guard Bari, which is of course a 5-star card. Then for the other reprint, we see Flame of Hope Ermo, which has the abilities Continuous Rearguard Circle. During the battle, it boosted. This unit gets power plus 3k. And it has the ability Auto Rearguard Circle. When your opponent's rearguard is retired during your turn, cast Retire this unit. Draw a card and countercharge 1. This is for me a solid 5-star card reprint because it's a clan staple. It's still used till this day, and it's still quite expensive, so it's nice to see this card now widely available for anybody. Then for the third reprint, we have Calamity Tower Wyvern, which has the ability act on Rearguard Circle, cause Soul Blast 1, and retire this unit. And one of your Vanguards gets power plus 15k until the end of turn. Now this is a very important card for the cross build and for any restanding capability or restanding unit for Kagero, but this didn't need a reprint because it's a common, which is still pretty accessible. So for me, this is going to be a 1-star reprint, as I did not really think that this card needed a reprint at this stage. Now for the final reprint, we have Burn Rise Dragon, which has the ability Auto Rearguard Circle. When your Vanguard stands by a card's ability, cost counter plus 1 and discard a card from your hand. And this unit gets power plus 15k, critical plus 1 until the end of turn. This was originally a promo, which makes it okay as a reprint, but I don't really think that this card needed a reprint, as it doesn't fit in a lot of decks. Yes, it works with the restand build, but the counterblast cost on this and the discard cost made a lot of players turn away from this card to actually use it in their build. But hey, it's once again accessible, and you can utilize this potentially with the Cross and Dauntless Drive Dragon. So for that, it's a 2-star reprint for me in this case. Now if we go to the actual new cards, we see a Grade 1 Dragon Knight Heat Shot, and Heat Shot has the abilities Auto Rearguard Circle. When placed, cost counter plus 1 and Soul plus 1. Draw a card, choose one of your opponent's back row rearguards and retire it. And it has the ability, although when rolled upon, look at the 5 cards from the top of your deck, reveal to 1 grade 3 or greater card from among them, and put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. For me, this is an okay 3-star card. I like the only thing that I like about this card is the second ability for the search effect that searches for any grade 3, and it's an actual plus. but the first ability is kind of outdated. Like these type of skills, we saw them at the beginning of the reboot. So yeah, this is fine, but I don't really think that this is gonna make the cut in most decks. Now, as for the new grade 2, we have Break Breath Dragon, which has the ability Auto and Rearguard Circle. At the end of the battle it attacked. If your opponent's rearguard was retired this turn, cast retire this unit and draw a card. And it also has the ability Auto, when rode upon, choose one of your opponent's rearguards, retire it. If you did not retire, draw a card. So overall for me, this is going to be again a solid 3-star card, because this card is basically just generic value. It is a cycle card in itself, and you can use it to beat into a rearguard, and if your opponent doesn't stop the attack, then it is seen as retired, so then you can retire this card to draw a card. So you cycle through your deck in search for your key pieces. And the second ability is basically a Berserk Dragon that punishes if you play around Berserk Dragon, as basically your opponent doesn't want to call rearguards because they get retired, but if they don't call rearguards, then you get a free draw. Either way, it's a win-win. You get a +1 in some capable form, which is nice, so therefore it's a solid 3-star card in my opinion. And then we get, of course, to the main grade 3 for Kagero, which is Dauntless Drive Dragon. And it has the abilities Auto and Vanguard Circle. At the end of the battle, your drive check reveal 2 or more normal units. One of your front row rearguards get power plus 10k until the end of the turn. This is a really nice skill, because that means you will always have the power increase of at least one trigger. Either you get the trigger and you give a unit plus 10k power, or you don't get triggers and then you forcefully give a rearguard plus 10k power with this ability. So every single time you attack with this unit, you will get some extra power increase onto the board. Sadly, it's only for rearguards though. But then it also has the ability Auto and Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, at the end of the battle it attacked. If your hand has 4 or more cards, cast, discard 3 cards from your hand and stand this unit. So basically this means you will attack twice, so you have a restander once again. Sadly it does cost a lot, but you don't lose the drive check, so you have twin drive on both attacks, which is actually something we don't see that often, which is nice. But that also means that the first ability can potentially activate twice. So that's actually pretty good. So that means even if you don't hit any triggers, you still get some value out of those attacks, except besides just the Vanguard pressure itself. But then we also have the third ability, which makes things a lot more interesting, as that is Auto, when rode upon, choose one of your Vanguards and it gets all of the card's auto abilities other than this ability until the end of turn. So basically, if you're right on top of this, it takes the first effect and it takes the second effect, meaning it turns any grade 3 into a restander that can potentially just give one of your rearguards plus 10k power. And if you ride him on top of himself, that means you can actually attack 3 times with Dauntless Drive Dragon, and if you have an attack where you don't hit any triggers, you can actually give 20k power to the field because you can activate that first ability twice. So overall, this is actually a pretty nice card, but I will only give it 3-star rating because there is an issue with this card, and that's the fact that it is really slow. It itself, as a first grade 3 ride target, doesn't actually do a lot. Like, yes, you can restand him and you can attack twice with the Vanguard, but you're dependent on actually hitting critical triggers to offer that pressure that you need. And you do minus yourself by restanding, because yes, you have 4 drive checks, but you need to discard 3 cards, so you go -1 in your overall card advantage, which isn't actually a good thing to do if you aren't pushing that hard that turn. And then yes, the following turn you can actually push for real hard if you rewrite him, and you can attack 3 times, or you rewrite into something else that has a strong Vanguard pressure that then suddenly can attack twice. But the problem is, that's really slow. And that isn't really great in the current environment, so for that I can only give it a 3-star rating. Maybe we get some way to superior ride into him a lot faster, so we can achieve this a lot faster, but currently that's not the case. So for me, this is going to be a 3-star card. Maybe with future support this card can come up once again if we have better grade 3s to break right into or something, but currently that's sadly not the case. Now for the other Dragon Empire clan, we have Nubatama, and for Nubatama of course we have the Draw PG, which is Stealth Beast, Muujin Gakure, and this is of course a 5-star card. Then for the other reprints we have Stealth Rogue of the Night Sakura Fubuki, and it has the ability Auto Rearguard Circle. When placed, if you have 3 or more units, cast, discard a card from your hand. This unit gets power plus 3k until the end of turn. If there are 1 or less face-up cards in your damage zone, draw a card and counter charge 1. This is a really good grade 1 for Nubatama, but I don't think that this card actually needed a reprint because it's an old rare that's still quite accessible. So for me it's gonna be 1 star, but maybe you're really happy with this card if you couldn't get your hands on it. But for me, I don't really saw the need for it to get a reprint. Now, for the other reprints, we have Evil Stealth Dragon Kurogiri, and it has the ability act on rearguard circle, cost Sol-2, and return this unit to your hand, and call up to 2 Evil Decoy tokens to the rearguard circle. Now, this is for me a solid 4-star card because it's an older trip R, and it's very much needed for the Hanzo build, which just got an upgrade. So this is actually a really good reprint that now makes it a lot more accessible if you needed to want to build a deck. Now, I don't think this card was all too expensive, but at the very least, it sure isn't now. And the same thing goes for the other reprint, as we've got Evo Stealth Dragon Zangetsu, which basically falls in the same pattern as Kurogiri, as it's of course a solid 4-star card because of the abilities that it has. Because its abilities are act on Vanguard the rearguard circle, cost +1, call an Evo Decoy token to the rearguard circle, and until the end of turn, all of your tokens get boost and power +5k. And it has the ability on the rearguard circle, when attacked, you may change that attack's target to one of your rearguard's tokens. If you do, return this unit to your hand. So again, this is a very good staple card for the Hanzo deck, and it was an older triple R, so it's great that it gets a reprint. Did it really need it? I'm not so sure, but it's great to have it, and that's why I think it's a solid 4-star reprint. Now, if we get into the actual new cards, we can see Evo Stealth Dragon Kage-Sarashi, and Kage-Sarashi has the ability act on rearguard circle, cost retire this unit, call up to 2 Evo Decoy tokens to the rearguard circle. Then, if you have a Vanguard with Hanzo in its card name, cost, put a card from your hand into your soul, search your deck for up to 1 card with Hanzo in its card name, reveal it, and put him into your hand, and shuffle your deck. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. For me, this is a solid 4-star card, because it creates 2 tokens for free, which is really important with the old Hanzo that can utilize its skill by sacrificing those 2 Evo Decoy tokens, so that's already really good synergy. But more importantly, you want to have the new Hanzo in your soul, as well as a copy in your hand. This card fulfills that. It can put that copy into the soul, and then immediately searches another one from your deck, which is also a deck filter, and the only thing that it costs you is this unit. It doesn't cost you anything. It isn't a discard, it isn't soul, it isn't counterblast, it fulfills everything you need. So this is a really good card for the Hanzo deck. And then for the next card, we have a new grade 2, which is Evil Stealth Dragon Yamishibuki. And Yamishibuki has the abilities, continues a rearguard circle. During your turn, this unit gets power +5k for each of your grade 0 rearguards. So for every token or just your triggers that you call, this thing becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. So it's a nice beater to have. But then also, auto on Vanguard the rearguard circle, when it attacks, cost +1, and return another rearguard to your hand, and call up to 2 Evo Decoy tokens to the rearguard circle. So this is actually really good in the early game because again, you can swarm the board and then bounce those units effectively back. But with this ability, you not only bounce that unit back into your hand, you also create 2 Evo Decoy tokens, which are interceptors, but it also makes this card 10k stronger, so suddenly you can actually beat for good numbers and potentially overcome the defensive trigger. So that's actually really good. So for me, that's a solid 4-star card because it's a nice combo extender, and it can be a really good aggressive tool in the early to mid game as well. And now we get to the final card for Nubatama, which is of course our new Hanzo card, as we've got Evo Stealth Dragon Tasogare Hanzo. And Tasogare Hanzo has the abilities, auto from hand, at the beginning of your opponent's turn, if your Vanguard is Evo Stealth Dragon Akatsuki Hanzo, cost discard 2 cards from your hand, write this card as rest, and all of your rearguards get shield +5k until the end of turn. At the end of the turn, write a Evo Stealth Dragon Akatsuki Hanzo from your soul as rest. So this is the reason why you want to have at least 1 copy in your hand, because you can write it, you do get a protect marker, so if you play protect 2 or protect 1, you get that value a bit back, but at the same time, it makes all your interceptors double the value, and because we play with these Evo Decoy tokens, which are interceptors that can intercept from the back row, suddenly turning them into 10k interceptors can actually make up for the discard cost of this effect and potentially give you even more shield than you would otherwise. And it can negate nasty guard restrictions that prohibit you from guarding from hand, or maybe even protect against protect markers or sentinels. So this actually gives you good defensive options. But it also is an offensive card, as we have the ability auto from soul. When your Vanguard with Hanzo in its card name attacks, cost retire a grade 0, call this card to the rearguard circle, and until the end of turn, this unit gets power +20k and can attack from the back row. At the end of the turn, put this unit into your soul. If you put this unit into your soul, call an Evo Decoy token to the rearguard circle. So this is a free multi-attack enabler, because if we just have grade zeros onto the field, when we attack with the Vanguard, we can turn those grade zeros into other copies of this card if they are in our soul, and then attack with them as 32k beaters, which are pretty massive. And then at the end of the turn, we can put them back into the soul and create new Evo Decoy tokens, which are interceptors. And the next turn, when our opponent attacks, we can use this card from our hand to turn those Evo Decoy tokens in really strong interceptors as well. So you can see the synergies between these two skills, and then we can see the synergies with the other cards, especially the grade 2, which mid-battle can create those tokens. So we might create a field that has no tokens, be very aggressive, and then mid-battle create suddenly new tokens out of nowhere, which then turns into these new Hanzos for even more attacks. So as you can see, there is a lot of potential in this deck, and I really like this card. So for me, this is going to be a solid 4-star card. Like, it's not super generic. You need to build the deck specifically for this playstyle, but the deck itself is really fun and can actually dish out a lot of pain if you have the right pilot behind it. Now, if we go for the 6th clan, we enter Nova Grappler, and for Nova Grappler we of course have the Draw PG, which is Twin Blader, which is of course 5 stars. Now, for their other reprint, we have Beast Deity Glance Dragon, which has the ability on a rearguard circle once a turn, when your other unit attacks, if you have a grade 3 Vanguard with Beast Deity in its card name, cost +1 and restand this unit. For me, this is going to be a solid 3-star card. Like, it's an older double R, it's very important for the Beast Deity deck, so I think it's a nice reprint to have nonetheless. Now, we also got yet another grade 1 reprint, as we got Beast Deity Scarlet Bird, which has the ability on a rearguard circle, when placed during the main phase, cost +1, stand all of your units. If you stand 2 or more units, and if Beast Deity White Tiger is in your soul, draw a card. Now, this is a very important card for Beast Deity, but it's only a 1-star reprint for me because it's an old rare that is still accessible, so I didn't really see the need in actually reprinting this card. Now, for the final reprint, we have Ultra Beast Deity Illuminal Dragon, which has the abilities on a Vanguard circle once a turn. At the end of the battle that your rearguard's attack did not hit, cost counter +1, stand that unit, and it gets power +10 until the end of turn. That unit attacks your opponent's Vanguard, so basically it immediately attacks after it restands. But it also has the ability auto Vanguard to rearguard circle once a turn. When your other unit attack hits, this unit gets power +15k until the end of turn. So it can also be a massive beater. And interesting enough, it doesn't need to hit the Vanguard. So you can also attack a unit into a rearguard, and it can still activate this ability. For me, this is going to be a solid 3-star reprint. Like, it's an older triple, but I didn't think this card was all too expensive. But at the very least, now we know for sure it definitely isn't expensive, because this card is a really good support card for the entire Beast Deity archetype, and to some extent can be splashed in any Nova Grappler deck out there. Now, for the new cards, we have Beast Deity Liv Taurus, and Liv Taurus has the ability auto rearguard circle. When placed during your main phase, you may stand one of your units with Beast Deity in its card name. This is really nice. It can synergize with your Vanguards that can rest themselves, or with your Vanguard that can allow your rearguards to attack and then keep them in rest position. You can basically restand them immediately, so you get more value out of all your main phase and right phase attack steps. So that's a pretty nice effect. But then it also has the ability auto Vanguard to rearguard circle. When your Vanguard attack hits, look at the 5 cards on top of your deck, reveal up to 1 grade 3 card with Beast Deity in its card name from among them, and put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. If you put a card into your hand and this unit is on a rearguard circle, put this unit into your soul. So we have some search ability for a grade 3, so it increased our right consistency, but some of those grade 3s we actually want to call to the rearguard circle for strong attackers or beaters, so that's also really nice. And at the same time, the soul generation is also really good, because we just saw a grade 1 that uses soul for restand options. So overall, it's a really good card in my opinion, and I think it's a solid 4-star card for Beast Deities. Now, as for the grade 2 for Beast Deity, we have Beast Deity Typhoon Bird, and it has the ability act on Vanguard to rearguard circle once a turn. If you have a Vanguard with Beast Deity in this card name, cost counter +1. Look at the 5 cards from the top of your deck, call up to 1 card with Beast Deity in its card name other than grade 2 from among them to the rearguard circle as rest, and shuffle your deck. So effectively, it just calls you either a grade 1 or a grade 3. Now, the issue is that you call it as rest, so you don't immediately get value off of it. But if we call Scarlet Bird or Taurus then they can restand themselves, or in Scarlet Bird, restand the entire board, and we can actually gain value off it. Or it can synergize with our new grade 3. If our Vanguard is at rest position and we call either of those grade 1s, we can immediately reset the Vanguard, so it has some inherent synergies as well. So it's basically a plus engine that doesn't really look that good in first sight, but if we combine it with the right cards, we can actually gain value off of it. So for me, it's gonna be an okay 3-star card. Like, it's an okay card, it has some options, but I think there are also better cards out there, especially in the grade 2 department. Now, as for the final card for Beast DT, we have our new grade 3, which is Beast DT FX Buster. And FX Buster has the ability, auto Vanguard Circle, when placed or rode upon, cost, discard 2 cards from your hand, stand one of your units with Beast DT's card name, and attacks your opponent's Vanguard with that unit. At the end of the battle, if that attack did not hit, stand that unit, and if the attack hits, that unit gets drive -1 until the end of turn. So this is again a way to basically get another attack off, but what it basically is that it allows you to attack with your Vanguard and you gain the extra drive checks. Now there is some issues with the rulings here and there has been clarification, but I'm not gonna go over that in this video. But if you ride him on top of himself, this skill will activate twice and you have the chance of actually attacking 3 times with the Vanguard in that particular turn. But your opponent can screw with you to some extent. So it's kind of a tricky move, but it can give you the actual free pressure, and as soon as it doesn't cost you Counterblast or Soul Blast, you can actually gain a value of it. And even if your opponent allows the attack to hit, which means you don't restand your Vanguard, you do lose the drive check, but you don't restand it, you can still restand it in the main phase with Lift Taurus as well as Scarlet Bird, so you're still able to attack with your Vanguard, so there is still the options to do that. And then for finally, it also has the secondary effect, which is auto on Vanguard Circle. When your unit with Beast DT and his card name attacks, costs Counterblast 1, and that unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. This basically is an extra thing that you can potentially utilize to power up all your attacks to a certain threshold if your opponent plays Force, or they got a defensive trigger. So it's a nice thing to have, but you probably not really gonna rely on this ability all that much. Now for me, I like this card a lot, and I will give it 4 stars. I know a lot of people don't like this card for what it is, and it's kind of awkward to use, but I think there is actually value behind this card because the Beast DT archetype was all about chaining your attacks in the correct pattern to actually maximize your value, and I think this is exactly the same thing with Epic Busters. Like, you shouldn't just blindly use this card, because if you do, you're gonna screw yourself over as your opponent is gonna play around it correctly. But if you know how to play around everything, and you know how to actually pilot the deck, then I see a lot of potential within Epic Busters, because you can come out swinging so hard out of nowhere. So we're now entering the halfway point, so let's go over Dimension Police. And of course, their first card is their draw PG, which is Diamond Ace, and it's of course a 5-star reprint. Now in the other reprints, we see Magical Police Quilt, which has the abilities Auto Vanguard and Vanguard Circle. When placed, cost, discard a card from your hand, and one of your Vanguards gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. And it has the abilities Auto Vanguard Circle. When your Vanguard attacks, if that unit's power is 30k or greater, cost Counterblast 1 and draw a card. Now this is an older trip R, which makes it a very good reprint, but at the same time, I don't really think that this card was widely used in Dimension Police. It's a nice draw engine, but again, the clan suffers from Counterblast issues, so having this card on top of that might be a bit restrictive. So for my opinion, it's going to be a 3-star card, but depending on your playstyle, how you want to use, this card might actually be a really good reprint for you. Now for the other reprint, and this is going to be an amazing reprint, as we've got Twin Order. And I don't have to explain why this card is a 5-star reprint, because it has the ability Auto Vanguard Circle. When it boosts, one of your Vanguards gets power plus 10k until the end of turn for each of your Force markers. Like, this was a ridiculous expensive promo card, which is not finally accessible for everybody, and you probably know why this card is so important and why it was so expensive. So it being in this set is really, really important. Now as for the final reprint, we have Platinum Ace, which has the ability to continuous a Vanguard Circle. During your turn, this unit gets power plus 5k. Okay, and auto on Vanguard Circle once a turn. When it attacks, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater with power 30k or greater, cost Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets power plus 10k, critical plus 1 until the end of turn. This for me, again, a really good reprint, a solid 4-star reprint, because it's an older trip R, but it's also somewhat of a clan staple that finds its way in a lot of decks because it really is a strong rearguard. So being now, again, printed here is really good for Dimension Police players to lower the value of the cost that you need to pay if you want to play the deck. Now, if we go into the actual new card, we can see the Zeals, and for the grade 1 we have Eye of Destruction Zeal, and it has the ability, although in Vanguard the Record Circle, when placed, look at the 7 cards from the top of your deck, reveal the one grade 2 or greater card with Zeal in its card name from among them, put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. For me, this is going to be a 3-star card and somewhat on the low variant of 3 stars, because this is basically the top 7 searcher, but it only has that ability. We have seen grade 1s with this ability and something extra. This is just a searcher, that's it. So for me, it's going to be a 3-star card, but it's on the lower spectrum of those. Now, if we go for the grade 2, we see Devourer of Planets Zeal. And it has the abilities, act on Vanguard the Record Circle once a turn, cost +1 and rest 2 rearguards. Choose one of your opponent's Vanguards and it gets power -5k until the end of turn. If you have Eye of Destruction Zeal in your soul, draw a card. And it has the ability, although when rode upon by a grade 3, choose one of your opponent's Vanguard and it gets power -5k until the end of turn. So effectively this card just lowers your opponent's power a bit. It's not that great of a minus, but it can add up if you combine it with the grade 3 Zeal, and if you potentially could utilize this ability maybe more than once, as you can have multiple copies of this grade 2. Now, the draw in it is actually really nice, but might be a bit annoying to set up if you cannot get your hands on the grade 1. So it's kind of inconsistent, but you need to draw to actually justify the value that you need to put into this card on its own. But if we take a look at the grade 3, then suddenly we can see more value behind this particular grade 2. So for me, this is going to be a 3-star card on its own, because the skills that it has, if you just look at what it does, aren't that great, but it can be a nice extra addition for the grade 3 itself. Because if we take a look at the grade 3, we have Galactic Beast Zeal. And Galactic Beast Zeal has the abilities, although Vanguard the Record Circle, when placed from hand, look at the top card of your deck and call it to the Record Circle. So that's already a 3+1. If this unit is on the Vanguard Circle, choose one of your opponent's Vanguards and it gets power -5k until the end of turn for each marker on your opponent's circle. So if you went second, that means you have at least one marker, so you get a free -5k reduction. And if you rode upon from the grade 2, they already go -5k, so that's already -10k. And this can stack up for every single turn that you place it. So that can actually be quite a sizable power reduction. But then we also have the ability, act on Vanguard Circle once a turn, cost +1, and put one or more rearguards into the soul. Choose one of your opponent's Vanguard until the end of turn, it gets power -10k, so another 10k goes down. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, and Devourer of Planet Zeal is in your soul, this unit gets drive +1 for every 2 cards put into your soul for this cost. So you can put 2 rearguards into the soul, which gives you triple drive, or you can put 4 rearguards into the soul and it gives you quadruple drive, while your opponent is at least -10k and potentially -15 or 20 or 25, and it can stack up quite sizably. And this ability is where suddenly the value of the grade 1 and grade 2 comes into play, because we can put the grade 1 into the soul with this ability, thus putting the draw engine of the grade 2 online, and at the same time we can then use the grade 2 to rest 2 or 4 rearguards, and then we can put those 4 rested rearguards immediately into the soul for Zeal, thus gaining extra value off of those particular cards that we already use for other costs. So that's actually really good in cost efficiency wise, that we utilize our resources, which is really powerful. So that makes the Zeal deck in its own right already really good. But Zeal is actually also splashable in other archetypes. We can use this in combination with black, for example, because if we write it, we can immediately call a unit to the field. So that means if we combine it with black, we can actually achieve 5 multi-attacks, similar to what we could get if we combined it with the Metal Borg engine. Only the Metal Borg engine is a bad engine, and the Zeal engine is actually pretty powerful. So that makes that play a lot better. So for me, Galactic Beast Zeal is a solid 5-star card. Like, I like this card a lot. I like the playstyle. It looks pretty strong. It is also somewhat flexible that you can use in multiple decks as a separate engine. So I think it's pretty damn decent. Now, if we go to the 8th clan, we see Spike Brothers. And for Spike Brothers, we of course have their RPG, which is Chirgol Marilyn, which is of course a solid 5-star card. Now, if we go into the reprints, we can see Wonder Boy, which has the abilities Auto Rigger Circle. When placed, cost. Put a non-grade 1 card from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck, and this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. And it has the ability Auto Rigger Circle. At the beginning of your main phase, cost. Put this unit into your soul. Search your deck for up to 1 Wonder Boy, call to the Rigger Circle, and shuffle your deck. Now, this is a clan staple card, but it didn't need a reprint because it was an old rare that's still very commonly accessible. So for me, it's gonna be a 1-star reprint because I don't think it actually needed it. Now for the other reprint, we also have Commander Gary Cannon, which has the ability Auto Rigger Circle. When you attack that it boosted hits a Vanguard, cost. Put this unit into your soul, draw 2 cards, and put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck. Again, a card that is very useful for Spike Brothers and to some extent, you could say a clan staple, but it depends on your playstyle if you like this card or not. But it's still an old rare that's still very accessible. So again, I don't think this card needed a reprint. And then finally for the reprints, we have High Speed Brocky, which has the abilities Auto Rigger Circle. When placed, this unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. And Auto Rigger Circle. At the beginning of your main phase, cost. Put this unit into your soul. Search your deck for up to 1 High Speed Brocky. Call to the Rigger Circle and shuffle your deck. Again, somewhat of a clan staple, you could say. But again, it didn't really need a reprint because it again is an old rare. So again, it's going to get a 1-star reprint just like the other ones because they're good cards. But I don't really think they were that necessary to get them the reprint spot in this set. So yeah. So with those reprints out of the way, let's dive into the new Dudley support. And we start off with the grade 1, which is Dudley William, which has the abilities Auto Rigger Circle. At the end of the battle, it boosted cost. Put this unit into your soul. Choose one of your units and move all of the force markers on your circles to that unit circle. So again, this is good support for Dead Heat Bull Spike or for Rising Nova, as it allows you to move those circles that you want to. But at the same time, it can just be used for any build, and you now have this free moving, and it putting itself into the soul is nice because Spike Brothers utilize the soul quite effectively for their resources for different skills. And then also have the skill Auto, when rode upon, you may call this card to the rearguard circle. So this basically means that you will always get access to his rearguard skill, because even if you need to ride it, you can call it to the field and potentially then move markers, which is nice because that means you actually don't lose out on soul, because it puts itself from the soul onto the field, and then later that match you can put it back into the soul, which is actually a pretty nice effect. So for me, it's going to be an overall 3-star card because it's not very powerful, but it's a nice card and nice tool to play with. Now, as for the grade 2, we have Dudley Davy, which has the ability Auto Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. When placed, cost counter plus 1. Search your deck for up to 1 non-grade 2 card with Dudley in its card name. Call it to the Rearguard Circle and shuffle your deck. So basically, you can call the grade 1 or the grade 3. Now, if you utilize this skill, you're going to call it grade 3. You're not going to call the grade 1 because you don't really get beneficial effect from it. And by calling the grade 3 to the Rearguard Circle, you can immediately use its skill to refund the counterblast by using 1 soul. So that's actually really good value, because it means you get that unit onto the board for 1 soul. So that's much, much better. But then we also have the ability Auto and Rearguard Circle. Once a turn, when a force marker is put onto the unit circle, you may soul charge 1. So this is very interesting, because if we place the force mark underneath it, by just when we ride the grade 3, we gain 1 soul. Or if we move it underneath it, we also gain the soul. And interesting enough, it costs soul to move it with Bold Spike. So actually, by utilizing this card in that engine, you can move your markers once for free every single turn. So it's actually really good. And with the grade 1 moving itself into the soul when moving it, if you combine the grade 1 with this grade 2 and you move the markers underneath it, you actually generate 2 soul. So you suddenly have a really solid soul engine on your hand. So for me, it's an okay card because it gives you that soul engine, but it also is a really nice card that pluses you onto the field, and it can be a nice combo extender with the grade 3 that we're going to talk about in a moment here. So for me, I think it's a solid 4-star card. It's limited to the Dudley engine with its first ability, but it can be used in a generic sense thanks to the soul charge capability it has with its second skill. Now, if we take a look at the grade 3, we have Demonic Lord Dudley Lucifer, and it has the abilities Auto and Rearguard Circle when placed by a card's ability cost Soulless 1 and Counter Charge 1. So this is the ability that I referred to with the grade 2, where you have that nice synergy. But this works with a lot of skills within Spike Brothers, so having this ability to refront the Counter Blast is actually really good, especially if it comes off of an ability that uses Counter Blast in the first place. So that's already really nice. But then it also has the ability Auto and Vanguard Circle when it attacks cost Counter +1 and put a rearguard into your soul. Draw a card, call to one card with Dudley in his card name from your hand to the rearguard circle, and if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, that called unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. So the first part of the ability is basically a cycle effect. You can put a rearguard into the soul to draw a card. That will always activate. Now, is that the counterblast worth? Not really, but at the same time you generate soul, so if you needed soul for something, fine. But if you have a Dudley card in your hand, it basically is another multi-tech tool for Spike Brothers, and that unit gaining an extra 10k power potentially means that you can effectively hit over defensive triggers, which is actually pretty nice. And if you call himself with this ability, you can immediately refront the counterblast, thus turning this whole ability into a wash, because you pay a counterblast, you get a counterblast back, and you put a card into the soul, but you immediately soul blast it. So effectively, you turn a unit onto the field into a Dudley Lucifer that gains 10k power, which is also an extra attack because it happens mid-battle, which is actually really good. But you can also combine this with the grade 2 Dudley, which then immediately can superior call another card from the deck, which you hopefully will be another copy of Dudley Lucifer. So suddenly, you can see this multi-tech going on because now you can generate 5 attacks. And because, of course, it is a grade 3, it can synergize with Rising Nova. That's all really good. But the only problem that I have with this card is that the chance of actually gaining good value off of his second effect, where most of its value lies, is very restricted because you can only call Dudley cards, which you only have 12 of, and you lose one because this needs to be your Vanguard or it needs to be on the field with Rising Nova. And the grade 1, you don't really want to call it because that's not really a good target. So you're already very limited. So for that, I can only give it a 4-star rating for what it is. Now, the next clan that we have is going to be none other than Pale Moon. And for Pale Moon, we of course have their draw PG, which is Hades Hypnotist. And that's of course a 5-star reprint. Now, for the other reprint, we have Amaranth Beast Tamer, which has the ability Auto and Vanguard Rearguard Circle. When attacks a Vanguard, cost put one other rearguard into your soul, and this unit gets power plus 3 until the end of turn. This isn't really a very good card for Pale Moon, but it works perfectly in combination with specific cards like Purple Trapezist or with the Nightmare Duel engine. So it's a good card, but it's a 1-star reprint for me because it's an old common that's very accessible and super cheap, so there was no reason to actually reprint this card. Now for the other reprint, we have Nightmare Duel Carol, which has the abilities Auto and Vanguard Circle. When placed, look the 5 cards from top of your deck, put one card from among them into your soul, and shuffle your deck. If you put a grade 3 Workoroid, you may call that card to the rearguard circle. And it has the ability Auto and Vanguard Circle. When your grade 3 rearguard is put into your soul, cost counter +1, and discard 2 cards from your hand, write a Workoroid from your soul as stand, and that unit gets drive -1 until the end of turn. Now this is the most important card for the Nightmare Duel archetype. Like, this is your boss unit where the entire engine revolves around. But it didn't really need the reprint because it was a double R that came from a set not all too long ago, and it was a budget deck. Like, this card was relatively cheap. I'm not 100% sure if it still was as cheap before this set released, but I didn't really think that this card needed a reprint, but at the very least it's here, which is nice, and you need it to build the Nightmare Duel deck, and as seen as this whole support wave is for Nightmare Duel decks, so I understand why they put it into the set. So for that, I give it a 3-star reprint because it's okay. But a reprint which is actively really good is Nightmare Duel Alice. Like, this card is insanely good for Pale Moon for all types of playstyles because of the following abilities. Because it has Auto and Vanguard Circle. When placed, call up to one Workoroid from your soul to the rearguard circle, and that unit gets power plus 5k until the end of the turn. That skill is okay, but mainly the usefulness lies in the other skill, which is Auto and Rigor Circle. At the end of the battle it attacked, cost counter +1 and soul +1, and put this unit into your soul and call a non-grade free card from your soul to the Vanguard circle. So this is your multi-tech engine for Pale Moon that also synergizes with a lot of interesting combo potential within Pale Moon. And this was one of the clan staples that even is widely used in Premium. So for that, I think it's a solid 5-star reprint card. Like, this card was kind of getting expensive at some point, and was one of those cards that make the Nightmare Doll budget deck kind of not budget because you needed the card, but if you had it, it was budget, and now we can say it's 100% is budget. Now, as for the actual new cards for Pale Moon, we have Nightmare Doll Abigail, and Abigail has abilities Auto and Vanguard Circle, when placed, Soul Charge 1. Nice, extra soul, which you always can use for Pale Moon. But then we have Auto and Vanguard Circle. At the end of your turn, cost, retire this unit, return a grade free Workroid from your soul to your hand. If your Vanguard is a Workroid, counter charge 1. This is extremely powerful and extremely good for the Workroid deck, and therefore I will give it a solid 4-star card. You might think to yourself, why not 5-star? Well, it's because it's completely restricted to the Workroid archetype. If you don't play the Nightmare Doll deck, it doesn't really do anything. But for the Nightmare Doll deck, it's insanely good because it generates the counter charge that you need to even activate your whole multi-attack potential in the rewrite of your Vanguard. And at the same time, it allows you to get the Great Freeze from your soul back into your hand, which you then immediately can call to the field that can activate your combos in the first place. Or you can just rewrite your carols if you just want to gain more extra circles that way, so you have the options available to you. Abigail is incredibly good for that deck, so yeah, it's a really solid 4-star card in my opinion. Now, another really good card in my opinion is the grade 2 Nightmare Doll Marissa, which has the abilities Auto and Vanguard Vanguard Circle, when placed from hand, cost, put a card from your hand into the soul, look at the 7 cards from the top of your deck, reveal the 2 non-grade 2 Workroid normal units from among them, and put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. So this is basically a archetype searcher. It searches either for your grade 1s or your grade 3s, which all are good targets. So there are basically no bad targets to get with this ability. And the fact that you put a card from your hand in the soul is also really good because it can set up for your combo potential later down the line, which is also really good. And importantly, it doesn't cost you anything. No soul, no counterblast, no nothing. Yes, it's only from hand, but let's be honest. You probably only need to resolve this ability 1 or 2 times in one game, and you should be done. You shouldn't be relying on this ability after that point. The rest of all the things that you want to do should be aggressive. So it having the restriction that can only be placed from hand is fine in my opinion. So I think it's a solid 3-star card for what it is. Like, it's not extremely powerful as the grade 1 is. It can enable you things, but it's still a really good card, but it also has the restriction that it's restrictive to the Workroid archetype. Now, as for the new grade 3, it isn't a boss unit, but it's goddamn good as a support unit because we have Nightmare Doll Chelsea, and Chelsea has the abilities Auto and Vanguard Circle. At the end of the battle it attacked, cost, counter +1, call up to 2 Workroids from your soul to the Vanguard Circle. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, those called units get power +10 until the end of turn. So this is basically your final rewrite target for Carol. If you're done, you want to go into this thing, because this thing for 1 counterblast can call out 2 other units. And it doesn't have any restrictions, so you can call out Alice's, which can call out even more units, so you can even go off of that. So there are some interesting combo potential that you have with this card, which already makes it a really good target for that. But I think the main kicker of this card is the other ability, which is Auto and Vanguard Circle. At the end of the battle it attacked, if your Vanguard is a Workroid, cost, put this unit into your soul, choose up to 1 of your opponent's rearguards, and your opponent puts that unit into his or her soul. That part is fine, but I think the more important part is that this card puts itself into the soul for free. Which means it activates your Carol rewrite ability without wasting a counterblast to put that unit into the soul in the first place. The other way to utilize that rewrite is either to utilize Alice, which costs a counterblast to activate its skill. Yes, you get another attack off, but to even get it into the soul, you need to pay a counterblast upfront. And we had the grade 2 that can shove things into the soul, but it also costs a counterblast, thus wasting more counterblast than probably was necessary to even activate the rewrite, because the rewrite also costs you a counterblast. Having this card that puts itself into the soul, which also incidentally is a grade 3, is incredibly powerful, and especially the fact that it, as a rewrite target, is also really good. So Chelsea is, in my honest opinion, a solid 5-star card. Like, this can be its own boss unit to some extent, but it's also incredibly good as a support card for the actual Nightmare Doll archetype. Now we're nearing the end as we enter the 10th clan, which is of course Bermuda Triangle. And for Bermuda Triangle, we start of course with our draw RPG, which is Glittery Baby Lean. And Lean is of course a 5-star reprint because it's a draw RPG. Now if we go to the second reprint, we see Equable Career Spiana. And Spiana has the ability on Vanguard Circle. When placed, you may return a card with the same card name as a grade 3 card on your Vanguard Circle or Rearguard Circle from your drop zone to your deck. If you return a card, shuffle your deck and counter charge 1. So this for me is going to be a 1-star reprint because it's not really a clan staple and it's also a rare. So this card wasn't expensive, it's easy to get, so I don't really see the point of actually reprinting this card in this set. Now another card that falls similar in line with this card is the following reprint, which is Rainy Tears Tessa, which has the ability Autumn Rearguard Circle. At the end of the battle it boosted a Vanguard, cost, retire this unit, draw a card, and cost counter +1 and put a grade 3 card from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck and draw a card. Now, this is also a card that's somewhat a staple, somewhat not a staple. So it's not the greatest reprint card, but at the very least it was a double R, so it's a lot harder to come by than the grade 1 that we just talked about, which was a rare. So I think this is going to be a 3-star reprint. Like, if I'm going to be honest, there aren't really great reprints for Bermuda Triangle, but that's because their support is all over the place. So it's hard to pinpoint which cards you actually need to reprint, except for VRs, of course. Now, as for the final card for the reprints, we have Massily Clover Mine, which has the ability Autumn Rearguard Circle. When placed, cost counter +1, draw 2 cards, return a card from your hand to your deck, and shuffle it. If you do not have a rearguard with the same card name as your Vanguard on your Rearguard Circle, return 3 cards to your deck instead of 1. So this is going to be for me a 1-star reprint. Yes, it was an older double R, but this card hardly sees any actual play. Hardly any builds utilize this card, so I don't really understand why they chose to reprint this card. But yeah, that happened. So for me, it's gonna be a 1-star. Now, if we go into the actual new support, we start off with the grade 1, which is Innocence Murnale. And Murnale has the abilities Auto Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. When placed, cost, review a normal unit from your hand and put it on the bottom of your deck and draw a card. This is basically a cycle-ish effect, and it's fine. Like, it's free and it goes back to your deck instead of to your drop zone, so it's actually to some extent even better, but it depends on your playstyle. But it also has the ability Auto Rearguard Circle once a turn. When your grade 3 or greater unit is placed during your battle phase, if this unit is in your back row, you may have one of your Vanguards get power +10 till the end of turn. And this actually synergizes quite nicely with Bermuda Triangle, as Bermuda Triangle has various archetypes that actually allow you to rewrite your grade 3s during the battle phase. So this is actually pretty generic for that effect. So I think it's a solid 3-star card. The first effect is actually pretty decent for any deck, and then the second effect can actually be utilized by different builds like Riviera, for example, even the Highlander deck, and there are a couple of more that actually can utilize this to some extent. Now, as for the new grade 2, we've got Noir Fixer Hilda, which has the ability to continue a Rearguard Circle. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, this unit gets boost, which is fine, and it has the ability Auto Rearguard Circle once a turn. When your grade 3 or greater unit is placed during the battle phase, if this unit's in your back row, you may stand this unit. So basically this could be the booster behind your Vanguard, and it can effectively attack it allows you to boost your Vanguard twice if you rewrite it, which is fine, but it's not the greatest type of card. Like, there are better grade 2s than this, so it probably won't see a lot of play, maybe not even any play. So for me, it's gonna be a 2-star card, as it's whatever in my honest opinion. But then we get to the actual main card of this support with Bermuda Triangle, which is the support card for Prisms, which is the new grade 4 Legendary Prism Duo Nectaria. And Nectaria has the abilities Act from Hand, cost, bind this card, search your deck for up to one normal unit, bind it, and shuffle your deck. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. Now this is actually really good for the Prism archetype because they need cards in the bind zone to activate certain effects, and also it allowing you to search out any card that you want. So one of the Prism cards you can set up for your multi-tech plays with the main grade 3 that can appear called cards from the bind zone. But more importantly, this effect can set up herself because of her other effect, which is continuous of Vanguard and Vanguard Circle. During your turn, if you have a card with the same card name as this unit in your bind zone, this unit gets power plus 10k, and if this unit is on a Vanguard Circle, it gets critical plus 1 and drive plus 1. So it basically can set itself up to immediately become a 24k attacker. Now, you're not supposed to write this card in any circumstances because the grade 3 main unit is way better as a Vanguard than this card because it can get the extra drive, it allows you to multi-tech, it can generate you a lot of power, so there's no reason to actually go for this thing. This is mainly here as a 24k beater and to set up your bind zone for your grade 3 to have better targets to then superior call. So overall for me this is going to be a 4-star card because yes, it's not that generically good, but for the Prism archetype, having a card like this actually boosts the archetype quite significantly because they were lacking just in archetype cards, in archetype supports, and having this card basically 4 other copies with the Prism name is actually really good. And the card on its own is actually not that bad. The only issue is that for some reason they somewhat want to tell you to write this thing, which you just don't want to do in any circumstance, but it's fine. Now, if we go to the 11th clan of Clan Selection Plus Volume 2, we arrive at Aqua Force. And for Aqua Force, they of course have the Draw PG, which is Emerald Shield Pascal, which obviously is a 5-star reprint. But if we go to the other new inclusions for the reprints themselves, we see a promo which hasn't got a TCG release yet, which is the Grade 1 Battle Siren Dolcia. And Dolcia has the abilities Auto of Vanguard Circle. When placed, cast, discard a card from your hand and draw a card. So, a cycle effect. It's fine, it's free, so it's fine. But then also, continues on Vanguard Circle. If your opponent's Vanguard's current power is different from its original power, this unit can attack from the back row. Now, yes, it's an 8k that attacks on its own, but in the way that to activate the skill, your opponent is going to probably have minus 5k. So even if they're a force unit, they are then sitting at an 8k base. So it can actually hit. And then the skill actually comes up and it's an extra attack that you can dish out, which is actually pretty nice. So it's an interesting, nice support card for blue waves, and it works with Revan, but it also will work with Valio. So with that in mind, I think it's an okay 3-star card. The cycle is nice, and then the extra attack on top of it is just the extra added bonus on top. But then for the actual reprints, we see for the grade 2s Blue Wave Marine General Gallius, and Gallius has the ability to continue to Vanguard the Vanguard Circle. During your turn, if you have 4 more rest rearguards, this unit gets power plus 5k, and has the ability Auto on Vanguard Circle once a turn. When your grade 3 Vanguard attacks, if your opponent's Vanguard's current power is different from its original power, cost, counter plus 1, and stand this unit. Now this is one of the main grade 2s for the Revan build, but now also for the Blue Wave Valios deck, which is nice as it gets a reprint because it was also a tripwire. So this actually makes this card a lot more accessible, and it's somewhat of a staple for the archetype, which is great that we have it right here. So for that, I think it's a solid 4-star reprint. It's not as good in the generic sense for Aqua Force, but a solid card nonetheless. But then we get to Coral Assault, and Coral Assault has the abilities continuous or Vanguard Circle. During the battle it attacked, if 4 or more of your other units are in rest, this unit gets power plus 15k. And it has the ability Auto on Vanguard Circle. At the end of your turn, if the total of number of attacks this turn is 4 or more, cost, put this unit into your soul and draw a card. Now this is in actuality is a great generic reprint because it works for any deck for Aqua Force. Like, this is one of the clan staples, and therefore it is a solid 5-star card in my opinion for a reprint. Yes, we had a previous reprint in the festival collection, but those cards weren't as easy to get, and it didn't really drive the price down like we're going to see with this particular set. So very awesome to see this card. But then we get into the actual new support, and we see Blue Wave Soldier Senior Corvette. And Corvette has the abilities continuous on Vanguard Circle. During your turn, if you have a Vanguard with Blue Wave in its card name, this unit gets power plus 5k. So it's a 13k attacker, which is nice. It's also a 13k booster, which is great. But then it also has auto, Vanguard to Rearguard Circle. When it attacks or the attack it boosted hits a Vanguard, look at the 3 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 card with blue wave in its card name from among them, put them into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So it's an archetype searcher that doesn't cost you anything and can hit for multiple times, so you could actually get a decent amount of pluses from it. And with the amount of blue waves now actually making the deck and we have accessible to us or available to us, makes this card actually pretty decent. We have multiple grade 1s, multiple grade 2s, and also a grade 3, so that's actually pretty good. And with more blue wave support on the horizon, that makes this card even better. So for me, I think it's a really good, solid 3-star card. The only issue that I have with the card is that it's behind an on-hit, so your opponent could potentially put a damper on your draw advantage or your search capabilities. Now, as for the grade 2 in this set, we have Blue Wave Marine General Galliot, and Galliot has the abilities Auto and Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, costs counter +1, and send one of your rearguards with Blue Wave in its card name. So basically an extra multi-attack potential, which is great. And then we also have Auto and Rearguard Circle. Once a turn, at the end of the battle it attacked, if your opponent's Vanguard's current power is different from its original power cost, Soul +1, choose one of your other rearguards in the same column as this unit and exchange its position with this card. Now this is really great, because this is yet another way to achieve those extra attacks. And with your opponent being at lower base power, you want to attack as many times as you want, because it means every single attack will matter. And now with Valios being able to put your opponent's Vanguard power at a certain level and it doesn't allow it to increase or decrease, being able to dish out as many attacks as possible is that more important. So having a card like this that just allows you to swap those cards is actually really, really great. So it gives access to more attacks. So for me, this is going to be a solid 3-star card. Like, it's not the most powerful restender because the numbers of the attacks themselves, they're still 9, 8, and that kind of number, so it's easy to guard. But it synergizes really nicely with the archetype, what it wants to do, so that's actually pretty good in my opinion. But now we get to the actual main boss unit, which is of course Blue Wave Marshal Valios. And Valios has the abilities Act on Vanguard Circle once a turn, costs counter +1, and Soul +1. Choose one of your opponent's Vanguards, and until the end of turn, it gets power -5k. And if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, its power cannot increase or decrease other than by this effect and Guardian Shield. So it's similar to Revan, but only now it stays there. So every single attack will matter as long as they can hit. So now we can understand why the 8k back row attacker is so important, as well as the grade 2 that can swap columns, because it doesn't matter how low the number is, they will hit as long as they are at least 8k for your opponent's power level, because most grade 3s are 13k. So that's actually really, really good. But that's just the start, because it also has the ability Act on Vanguard Circle. Once turn, cost, discard a card with the same card name as your Vanguard from your hand, remove all markers from your circles, and call up to 5 cards from your drop zone to the rearguard circle. Now, you probably already noticed this card doesn't have an exile marker, so if you only play with himself, the cost that you remove your circles, your exile markers, doesn't really matter all that much. But basically what this effect is, it's a way to create an entire board without wasting cards from your hand. So if you're up against Kagero and they just destroy your entire board, you can utilize this skill to compensate for rebuilding the board. But it can also be a great way to just populate the board in the first place and keeping an incredibly sizable hand, because you can do this turn after turn as long as you can get copies of values in your hand. And with the grade 1 that can search for your blue waves, you have ways to actually search for this card quite effectively. And also, we have the grade 3 searcher, which incidentally is also a blue wave card. So we have more in-archetype support cards that actually support this playstyle. So this is a nice comeback strategy, as well as just a way to just ramp out a lot of value out of nowhere, even if you don't need it. But then on top of that, Valios also have a third ability, which is Auto and Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, at the end of the battle that your unit attacked, choose 2 of your rear guards and you may exchange their position. So this is effectively similar to the grade 2, only in this case it isn't limited to the column. So you can basically move one back unit from one column with the front unit from another column. Or maybe the booster behind the Vanguard can suddenly go to the front row somewhere. And that's probably the main gimmick for this card, to move the booster behind your Vanguard to the front row of another column that already attacked. So you can effectively have 6 attacks for every single unit on the board. And maybe even more if you have units that can restand themselves, like Tidal Assault, Elgos, or whatever other restanders we have, like Gallius, etc, etc. So This allows you to maximize the amount of attacks that you can dish out for your potential playstyle. So for me, Velios is a solid 4-star card. Like, it's not the generic boss unit that you can use in any deck, and yes, its second ability would be amazing if you just utilize that as a tech choice, as a potential comeback strategy in any other deck. But the problem is you need 2 copies of the card, so it's not as splashable as other potential boss units. So therefore I can only give it 4 stars, but the deck itself that it builds, the blue wave strategy, looks to be very solid. And we are going to get more blue wave supports in the future, so this deck could actually become even stronger. So I'm very curious of what the future has to hold. So for that, for now, at the solid 4-star. But now we get to the final clan, the 12th clan for Clan Selection Plus Volume 2, which is of course Great Nature. And we start off with our Draw PG, which is of course Cable Sheep, and it's a solid 5-star. But then we get into the reprints, and those are all the Hemscape cards, as we have the Grade 1 Pencil Squire Hemscape, which has the abilities continues a very good circle. If your Vanguard is Pencil Hero Hemscape, this unit gets power plus 4k. And has the ability Auto and very good circle. At the end of your turn, cost Soul plus 1 and put this unit into your soul. Search your deck for up to 1 Pencil Knight Hemscape, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So this is one part of the right chain that you're going to need to make full use of your entire plays. Now, it's a great card to have. You need to have it for the new Hemscape deck. But it didn't need a reprint because it was an old rare that's still accessible and super cheap. So they mainly put it into the set, so you have everything you need right out of the box. But did it need it? Not really, so therefore I can only give it a 1-star if I'm gonna be very honest. Now, the same thing can be said for the Grade 2, which is Pencil Knight Hemscape, and it has the abilities continues a very good circle. If your Vanguard is Pencil Hero Hemscape, this unit gets power plus 3k. And it has the ability continues a Vanguard circle during the battle that it attacked. If you have a Pencil Squire Hemscape in your soul, this unit gets power plus 5k. Again, you need it for the new deck, but it didn't need a reprint because it was an old rare that's still cheap and very easy accessible. So it's gonna be a 1-star reprint for me as of now. Now, as for the final reprint, we see Pencil Hero Hemscape, the Grade 3, which has the ability Auto and Vanguard Circle. When placed, if you have Pencil Knight Hemscape and Pencil Squire Hemscape in your soul, cost, discard 2 cards from your hand, get an Imaginary Gift Exile, search your deck for up to 1 Pencil Knight Hemscape and Pencil Squire Hemscape, call them to the Vanguard Circle, and shuffle your deck. This for me is going to be a 3-star reprint because it has the same issues as the other 2 reprints for Hemscape, but at the very least this was a triple R and therefore could be a bit harder to get your hands on. And I don't know what the actual price was of this card before this set dropped, but at the very least it's a higher rarity reprint, so there's at least that. Now, if we go over the new card for Hemscape, we start off with a new Grade 1, which is Hemscape's teacher Dip Pinsel Hamyuki. And Hamyuki has the abilities Auto and Vanguard Circle. When placed, cost, discard a card from your hand, search your deck for up to 1 Pencil Squire Hemscape, call to the Vanguard Circle, and shuffle your deck. Now, what's great about this card is that this basically is a backup for your right chain, because the Grade 1, if you call to the Vanguard Circle, can put itself into the soul and fetch you the Grade 2, so you can actually write the Grade 2. So either you write the Grade 1 and then you need the hard write into the Grade 2, or you write this Grade 1 and immediately get the Grade 1 into the soul and secure your Grade 2 write target. So that's already a really nice addition of this card. But it also has the ability Act on Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, if you have a Vanguard with Hemscape in its card name, cost, put 2 cards with Hemscape in their card names from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck in any order and countercharge 1. So this is a countercharger, which is already really good, but more importantly, it allows you to shuffle back the Hemscape cards, which you can superior call from your deck, so you can reload your deck with targets. But also, you're supposed to put a specific card, which is the old Grade 3 Hemscape, on the bottom of your deck for a superior write effect. So this sets up your deck, or better said, it sets up the bottom of your deck. It's a countercharge engine, and it allows you to reload the deck with superior call targets. And that's just the second effect. The first effect is basically a superior write fixer. So this Grade 1 is incredibly good for the Hemscape archetype. So for that, it's a solid 4-star card in my opinion, as it's really good for that strategy. But then we get to the Grade 2, and then we see Hemscape's rival Nil Pencil Hamgoro. And Hamgoro has the abilities Auto Vanguard the Vanguard Circle. When placed from hand, cost, counter plus 1, look at the 3 cards from top of your deck, reveal to 1 card with Hemscape's card name from among them, and put it into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So this is basically an archetype searcher. It's nice to gain more card advantage over time. It's not the most amazing card skill, but it's here, so it's decent. And it can help you to search for your grade 3, so you at least have that. But then it also has the effect, act on rearguard circle. Once a turn, if you have a Vanguard with Hemsky in its card name cost, put 2 cards with Hemsky in their card names from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck in any order, and this unit gets power plus 3k until the end of turn. So it can be a solid attacker, 12k attacker, and it once again can set up your deck as well as the bottom of your deck. So another way to increase the consistency of your deck, but it's not as good as a grade 1 in my opinion, so for that I can only give it a 3-star card for what it is. And then we get to the main grade 3, which changes everything, as we have Hemsky's rival Jumbo Crayon Hem-Yan. And Hem-Yan has the abilities act from Vanguard circle. Once a turn, cost Counterblast 2, and discard a card from your hand. Search your deck for any number of cards with Hemsky in their different card names, call them to the front row rearguard circle, and shuffle your deck. So this effectively superior calls the same amount of cards as you have front row circles. So on the first turn when you write this, it can be a +3. Now that doesn't sound amazing for a Counterblast 2 ability, but the old Hemsky allows you to create an Excel marker immediately when you write, and you have the entire write chain. So if you first go into that thing, you create 2 Excel markers, you go into this thing, you create the 3rd Excel marker, and suddenly you have 5 front row circles, so this could be a +5. And now you understand why you want to reload the deck with all your Hemskys, because you're going to superior call a lot. And they all need to have different names, so you need to have the correct targets in your deck to be able to facilitate this. But that isn't where the whole thing of this card lies, because we also have the other effect, which is auto on Vanguard circle. At the end of the battle it attacked, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater cost, discard 2 cards from your hand, reveal the bottom card of your deck. If that card is Pencil Hero Hemsky, write it as stand, and it gets drive -1 until the end of turn. So this is effectively a restander or a rewriter, which is crazy to think about, because it enables you a lot of extra multi-text and also this setup. Because if you write in this thing, you have 1 Excel circle and you can maybe superior call 3 units and attack a couple of times. Then you use this ability, rewrite into the new Hemsky, which you can easily set up. But once he enters the Vanguard circle, you can activate its ability to create another Excel circle, so you suddenly create 2 Excel circles on right, and then superior call the original grade 1 and grade 2 Hemskys to those Excel circles. So this particular effect to rewrite into the old Hemsky doesn't create 1 extra attack, but it actually creates 3 extra attacks out of nowhere. And then next turn, if you write back into him, you create the 4th Excel circle, and then you can use its main effect to repopulate the entire front row, which are 6 new units if your opponent cleared your board, which is insane. So this is honestly a very aggressive card, which basically evolves the entire Hemsky archetype, as it was already pretty solid, but with this it's ridiculous. So for me it's going to be a solid 5-star card. Like, this card and the Hemsky archetype is actually pretty strong thanks to the new support, and especially thanks to this card. So yeah, Great Nature players maybe on first glance weren't all that happy with this support, but maybe now that they saw the skills, are probably very happy with what they got. And with that, we conclude the set review for Clan Selection Plus in total 1 and 2. That was quite a while. My voice is basically dead, and we are what, maybe 3-4 hours later for 24 clans, about 160 cards. Rest assured, I will never do this again in the future. When we are going to get V collection, again, that's going to be all clans in one set, but I'm gonna divide that in a couple of videos, not for every single clan, but maybe in 3 to 4 videos, depending on how much I want to talk and go in depth in those cards. So don't expect any type of videos like this anytime soon in the future for set reviews at the very least. But with that said, I want to know what you guys think of these new cards. What do you think about the support that we got for Clan Selection Plus Volume 2? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. And don't forget, if any of these cards interest you, you can order them by package on their online store, and you can use the discount code TIMELEAP5 to get 5% off on your entire purchase to get your cards even cheaper. But with that said, I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider for making this video and everything possible. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I'm Mr. TimeLeap, See you guys in the next one.